All right, welcome back. It's been a while since we've done a series, and so this series we're going to do deer hair wings each week, or each video is going to cover a different style of deer hair wings. This first video, or first week, is going to cover the down wing, and the down wing just refers to that the wing is sitting down over the shank. And you'll see this on elk hair caddis. You'll see it on stimulators, things of that nature. It's typically more of a caddis and stonefly type wing. And if you've followed me for any sort of time, you'll know that I like to provide options. So the body part, you can use dubbing. You can. We're going to use turkey tail, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's a couple things I wanted to cover first. Let me get that out the way. But I want to talk briefly about deer hair and what this is, right? So is deer hair deer hair? Yes and no. Yes, it comes from a deer, and no, it's not all the same. What we have here is what's called primo. And so when you pop this open and it flares like this, you can see, if I can get my ruler out here, give you an idea. You're looking at about 2 to 2¼ inch, something like that, 2½ inch. Of deer hair or something in there. And primo doesn't mean that it's premium or it's hand selected or anything like that. It's actually just a name that is sort of industry standard. A lot of it comes from the back and the sides. And there'll be some different qualities to it. For one, the amount of underfur. The more underfur you have, the higher probability that the animal was taken closer to the winter months to help it keep warm. There's also things like comparadun hair and used to be referenced as like coastal deer. Coastal deer, the name says it all. They live down on the coast, and there's warmer climate down there, so the hair doesn't grow as long. Not usually as much underfur. And so on. Now, there's a lot of talk that you'll see a lot of people reference that deer hair is hollow. That's only partially true. It's more or less chambered, is the best way I've seen it described. So inside each piece of deer hair, there's little, you can't see it, but they're kind of like little honeycombs, almost. But there's little chambers and like little air pockets. And that helps insulate the animal over the winter months. It also helps stay cooler in the summer months. So with all that said, I just want to kind of touch base on a few things. So if you're new to fly tying and you're not sure what you're looking for when it comes to shopping for deer hair, you'll have a little bit better idea. Let me get my front light in place and I'll zoom in. So what I'm tying on here is just a size 12 barbless hook. And this will be fairly simple to get us going if you haven't done an extraordinary amount of deer hair wing. And this should be a good size. The thread I'm using is, and this is going to be for the entire session, is Semperfli Classic Wax 8.0 in dark brown. Dark brown can very easily, be changed to black with a little Sharpie. And if you bought a material kit, we're going to be tying all of these patterns in brown. We're going to be doing just a bunch of generic patterns because our focus is going to be on techniques and how to actually accomplish the wings over a fly pattern. I'd rather show you the techniques, and then you can dictate the colors that you want to put to them. And that should help you with your area. So if it's, you can tie all these for like a blue wing olive or a PMD or, Hendrix, whatever you want. All right. So to get started, we're going to use the thread for a rib because as being a dry fly, we want as little weight as possible on the back. And so I'm just going to take out 5 inches, and I want to start my thread where I'm going to place my wing. And so, grab my bodkin so I can give you a reference. So that's going to be about 2 to 2.5 bodkin widths just the actual width of the bodkin, obviously not the length, but about 2 to 2.5 back. And once you have it there, and you've got your jam knot started, slid a little bit, slip that down underneath, and let's tie that in on the bottom side. And we're going to take this back to where basically the bend starts, or where the barb would be, so about right there, and we can just take our thread and clip it out the way. Now for options. If you're going to dub this body, I would recommend getting some superfine dubbing. Oh, there we go. That's a little better. Get some kind of superfine dubbing or dry fly dubbing. You can also use things like Antron, anything that sheds water. This is going to be your synthetic dubbings and not naturals. We are going to use a lot of natural throughout this session because it helps give the buggy look. But anything synthetic, Antron, superfine, that type of stuff will work. You can also use general purpose. The goal is to keep the fly up on top because it's a dry fly, as all these patterns will be throughout the 6 weeks. And so if you're going to use synthetic and you're going to dub this body, you want to make sure to use some wax. And if you bought a material kit, you'll have a container of wax that looks like this. The wax is going to be super tacky. Leave it open just like this for a few days and just use it until you can see how much crud I've got on there. And actually this is when this wax gets to be the best, is when it's been mingled with a bunch of material. So when you first get it out the little ramekin, you're going to want a paper towel handy to wipe your fingers off. So if you're going to use synthetic, you want to dub your wax to help out. We're not going to do that. We're going to provide some options here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start with some Flashabou. I've just got a gold piece of Flashabou. You could use pearl or silver or whatever you want. And there's two ways to do this. You can tie it in at the back here, and if you do that, you just want to line these up so that they're about the same. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Adjust that in my fingers just a fuzz. The other thing you could do is bring your thread all the way forward and then tie it in from the front to the back. Now you can do that on these bigger flies, like on the 12 we're tying, if you're more comfortable with that. When you get down to the smaller stuff, you're going to want to tie it in the back. It just makes more sense and keeps the body down. We're going to use turkey tail, mottled turkey tail, just like this, for the fly. For the fly's body. Now, if you got damaged wing, or I'm sorry, damaged tail, this is a great place to use that up. And we just want to pull, really just about 3 to 4. We don't need much. That's probably one heavy. About something like that. And then as you're going to remove this from the stem, you want to pinch close with your opposite hand. This is my left thumb, left index, as I'm right-handed. I'm going to pinch tight right down by the base on that stem, and I'm going to actually remove this feather from these fingers, not the other way around. I've seen a lot of people in the past when they want to take this and rip it with their hand that's holding the feathers. Don't do that. Do it the other way. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it works way better. See? It comes off all like that. Now what that's doing is it's stripping off part of that stem, and it's going to keep all these fibers in line because it's not actually off the stem. You can see where I've cut it in the past, and it came with it. Now the tips are going to be typically pretty fragile, so we want to get rid of the tips. And we want to line this up the same way that we did that rib. Now, pinch wrapping this is the easiest. I've got a video on pinch wrapping if you don't know how to do that. Pinch wrapping is easier to make precise wrap locations. So I can actually dictate where that thread's going to go. As you can see, it's all the way to the back there. Rather than just putting it here and hoping and praying that it goes into the right spot, because that's kind of what happens. It wants to wrap around the shank. So I'm going to pinch wrap this. I'm going to line everything up with right where I started my thread. And we can just bring this guy forward until we get to where we started from. Now, using turkey tail, one of the things that will work the best for you for two reasons. One, it'll help secure the body without the rib. And two, a little bit of super glue will also leach into the thread as well as the tail fibers and help keep water out. But you don't want to use a lot, just a little. Just very, very little. Very, very little goes a long way. So quickly brush it on if you got a brush. Or if you have a different applicator, just make sure you don't do too much. So when we go to body this fly, you can go either way. Now I like my ribs to come clockwise, so therefore I'm going to bring my body counterclockwise. You want to try to leave them flat like this. If they twist and bunch up a little bit, it's not the end of the world. So if that happens to you, just roll with it. And you want to overlap a little bit, or at least I like to. I know some people will say right up next to it. If it starts to twist on you, place a finger, let go. You see I'm flicking it around. And that'll help flatten it back out. I didn't get quite close enough there. There's a little piece of flash showing through. And we're just going to bring this guy all the way up. And this is one of those things where you just take your time and get it right. Don't rush it. Once you put that super glue down, though, you have to kind of move. So if you're not used to using, if you're not used to using super glue, maybe do it without the super glue first and then do this. But now with that modeled turkey tail, you get this nice, crazy modeled body, which is fantastic. It gives it that buggy look. And you can tie this off on the top or bottom. And we're just going to come forward a few turns, and we're going to bring in the best tool in the business, the fingernail clippers, and clip that out. Now we have it nice and tight. Excuse me. We want to bring our thread back to where we started, or maybe even one wrap into the body. Now again, this body doesn't have to be perfect by any means. So with our Flashabou, this is also an optional thing. When you wrap your body like this and you're going to do a double rib, you want to go with the angle or the direction that you did your body wrap. So in this case, I went counterclockwise. And the reason is, I'll get back to that in just a second. So when you make your first wrap, you can actually do two or so at the back just to give a little hot spot. Now your rib thread's gonna cross over that. It's really not a big deal. So we don't have to get hung up on being super crazy with it. And I had another point and it's escaping me at the second. But we're gonna rib this forward about 3 to 4 turns. Whatever you're comfortable doing. Just try to keep the spacing even. And again, Flashabou or Crystal Flash or whatever, that's all optional stuff. You don't have to do that. And when you get to the front, tie it off. You can really kind of tie this stuff off however you like. It's so thin. I typically bring that material to the front side of my thread and then wrap over. I know that's not something that's commonly done, but that's something I like to do. Anyway, so now for the rib. Now, if you want to make this thing like super durable, we can take some super glue and brush it on the thread. I'll do it just to show you. But you really want very, 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 very little here. That's actually almost too much. You can see how the little beads are. You want very fine beads. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to bring this the opposite direction. Yep. And we're going to cross over this rib. Now when we do this, what I like to do on these double ribs, you may have to get one in the back to get it going. I like to cross over on the top, so that way it's covering the flash on the top and not the bottom. And so as your thread comes around to do the rib, I'm going between my two pieces of flash on the bottom. As it comes up top, I'm crossing over the top. And as I come back down around, I'm kind of evening out that angle, and you can see how my flash on the bottom is staying flashy. It's not being covered. And so the thread on the top, and I'm just angling that vise so that you can see it. But as that thread comes over the top, we're putting the blocking of the coloration of the flash up top and not underneath. Okay, I'll just tie that in with a couple of wraps. I'm going to pull this to the back. Put a few wraps in. And now we have the body. Again, you can dub the back of this body and rib it. You can use the turkey tail. You can. There's a lot of stuff you can do back here, so it's really up to you. You need to think about something that's going to work in your area, and really go with that. Okay, so for the deer hair portion, because now we're moving on to the wing. There's a lot of question marks around how do I get the appropriate amount of hair, and what hair do I select. So you can see here I've got a lot of curvature on this hair. Get this out of the way so it's not so blurry. But you can see here I've got a lot of curvature on the hair. Now this is fine. You can use this because we're only going to really be using about like that much of it. Not really much at all. And that part will be straight if you use that. So don't let that discourage you. But the one of the big questions is like, well, how much deer hair do I use? Or it could be elk hair. Same thing. Any type of hair like this. How much do I use? Actually, this could be done with squirrel or any type of hair wing. These techniques are going to, for the most part, ride true with. Go ahead and spin my thread up and get that loop out. Just put it over the back. There we go. If your thread's flattening too much right here, whoa. Sorry, I'm shutting a video in a while. But if your thread's flattening out too much, we want to get that to stop. So the question is, like, how much do I use? Okay, so one of the things I've been doing for years, and actually I just recently found out that Al Beatty, who's actually an award-winning fly tyer from Fly Fishers International, does the same thing. And you just take the hair and you twist it. Just like so. And you want to get down to the part where you're actually going to use. And you're going to line it up on your hook gap. So from the bottom of the shank to the barb or the point. And you want to get that hair nice and tight. And so that's going to kind of give you a correlation of how much hair is being used. Now when you're doing hair wings, we have to do a lot of cleaning to get out all the junk and the short fibers and everything. So you want to overshoot that a little so you can see when it's uncompressed how big it is. See, it like covers up that whole fly. When I twist it and compress it, I can see I have about a half a hook gap there. And then whatever amount you decide to start with, just remember that and then use that as a gauge. Okay, so if I'm going to go for half the gap, okay, then that's the amount of hair I'm going to use. And then if you take the fly fishing and you need more, then you say, okay, maybe I need to increase that to 3/4. But you want to add about probably 25 to 35% more hair than you think you're going to need. And this can take some time to kind of figure out and gauge. So we're going to clip that off right at the bottom of the hide. So we've got this big old clump here. We're going to pinch it together at the tips, and we're just going to use our fingers to pull this out. And then we'll pull this out. And you can kind of keep going. You want to make sure you pinch nice and tight so you're not just taking things at random. But we want to clean this out really well. One of the best tools in the business for this is a dollar comb that you can pick up at the dollar store or Walmart or whatever. And just run this through there. You can see all this other junk that just came out. If it's junk and it comes out, get rid of it. Don't hold on to it. You want to turn it over in your hands and do it again until you feel like you got it. Another thing you can do if you don't have a dollar comb is you can take your fingers and do this. And you'll start to get all the short fibers like this that'll start to pop out. You'll see them how they're starting to stick out the back there. And you just take them and pull them. Now, as you're doing this, you want to make sure you're pinching tighter and tighter with your fingers because you're decreasing the diameter of what you're actually pinching. So you want to make sure you hold on to that. Now, if you have like a winter deer or something like that, you're going to want to actually clean the tips out too. We don't really need to do that right here. This should be sufficient. So I'm going to use a hair stacker. There are ways to hand stack. It's fairly difficult, and it's at this point, it's almost a lost art. It's almost a lost art. And so it wouldn't be very easy for me to do a demonstration, and I cannot do it very well anyway. What I have here is a medium-sized hair stacker. This one happens to be from Griffin. It came with a little foam piece on the bottom. I got rid of that. I like direct contact between hard surface and hard surface. It seems to stack the hair a whole lot better. Now, as we pull this out, when you pull this out, angle it up a little bit to keep those tips in line. You can see I've got some junk in there. That's okay. You can just pull them out, switch hands, and we can just stack it again. I definitely recommend stacking this stuff at least twice, just to make sure you're getting everything nice and clean. The cleaner you have it, the less problems we can have up front. See, angle that just a little bit. And you angle it up so that it holds out up front. And you see like these guys popped loose. You want to get rid of them. That actually still held on pretty true. I don't know if I can get my thumb on there, so I'm going to stick that right back in the hair stacker. We just want to do that until we got something like this. Now at this rate, we can actually start to gauge how much hair we need, and you leave it right there in the chamber. On these down wings, typically they're coming out to about here where my fingernail is. Just past the barb, like right in this area right here. And so you can kind of see in real time and relative to it where it's coming. So I want to pull that out just a little bit more. And I want to pinch and then pull the hair stacking chamber away. I guess that's actually the slide. So I've got something that's like this. Now once you have this hair in your fingers, you want to pinch this stuff tight, real tight. And you want your fingers to line up so that they're as basically as of a flat of, how am I trying to describe this? As a flat a plane, I guess, as possible. And we're going to line that up directly over our thread. Now there's several ways to do this. One of the things I see people have commented on, I may have to stack another set of hair after this, but I'm going to show it to you anyway, and I have a separate video on it. It's called the elevated pinch wrap because people have a hard time with the hair moving and shifting from side to side. So to do the elevated pinch wrap, let me see if I can turn this sideways so you can see. You're going to bring your thread up in between your fingers. You're going to pinch both, down. Oh, so I can't do it that way. Pinch down so that it's not affecting the hair. You can see that the hair is not bending. Come up underneath, do it a second time, and if you let go of that thread, you can see it's just swinging. I can let go and I can set my hair down right where I want it, and then take it and pull up. Okay, and that's going to get you your wing where you need it to be. Okay, I won't have to set a second stack of deer hair here. That one got bent, because I was fairly certain it would, but I wanted to show you that. So that's an option. If you're having issues with your hair flailing around and moving around the hook shank, I'm not going to measure this one. I'm fairly confident that I can eyeball it. I'm going to clean this. I'm just cleaning this off camera because I can do it much faster than I can do it with the hair sitting out in front of me. Okay, I'll go ahead and stack it. I just cleaned it. I'm going to stack it. Okay. Let's do that again. Got a couple duds up front. All right, one more time. Usually 2 is really what you need. Sometimes I'll even go as many as like 3 or 4, depending on how nice I want the fly to look. And you just kind of repeat the entire process over and over. Clean, stack, clean, stack. One other thing I didn't mention is that we talked about, or I showed, like how there's a curvature to the hair on the fly. I'm sorry, on the deer hair. So when we stack this, we want to get that curvature so that the concave side of the curvature is facing down into the hook shank. Sometimes you get some really nice straight hair, and it'll work out. But most of the time, that's not the case. It's going to have a curvature to it to some degree, even though it's just slight. Make sure that curvature or the concave part of that hair is facing down. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do the same thing as the elevated pinch wrap here, except I'm just going to take it directly over top and just do a standard double pinch wrap. Same philosophy. You can see how my thread's swinging. I've got my other hand here. I'm not touching it. Now, as I take this thread and I'm going to pull this directly down from my pinch wrap. And I'm going to loosen up, and then I'm going to tighten it going directly up. It comes down, loose. And you want to make sure you're pinching really tight right here. And I'm going to back my fingers off a little bit, so I'm just grabbing just the wing. You can see how I slid my fingers back just a little bit. Now I'm grabbing just the wing. I can actually start to see what's happening. Now, on something like a streaking caddis, or say like a muddler minnow, that'd be another one, you can flare this hair all around the hook shank. We can tie through it so that it's sticking out every direction. And serendipity would be another fly that does this. And you can build the head that way. But what we need to do to tie this hair down is we need to actually work our thread through it. So you can see how I'm starting to I've got a little bit of separation there. Don't pull down. Loose over the top, pull up, grab a new swath of hair. The key to this is making sure you get that thread right back next to the other thread wrap. Pull up. Once you've done this 2 or 3 times, you can let go of that wing. And now we can actually grab the top and bring your thread to the opposite side. See how I'm tying that in so that the angle of my bobbin is coming off to the left bottom of the corner of the screen. That's to my lower left. You want to do this in small chunks, because we're going to encroach on that eye real fast. Now, there's ways to fix that, and we're going to get into that here in just a second. You can see how I've got no room left on that eye. And that's okay. What you need is either a hollow pin, like this, or you need a half hitch tool. That a lot of bodkins come with them on the back. It's just a little hollow point on the back of a bodkin. Before you do this, pinch that wing in place right behind where all this hair is flaring, and take that hole and shove it right up into that deer hair and twist. This is almost like a hair packer. Now when I pull this away, pull this back, you can see I just opened up almost a bodkin width. Almost. So you can do this a couple of times until you get it. Ooh, my vise came loose. I've been doing too many pictures. Tighten it down good enough. There we go. But you can do this a couple of times and get that guy right where you want it. And you can still see that wing flaring out in the back, just barely back here. Okay, and once you have that, just take your hands, kind of cup them so they come around, and pull everything and draw everything back. And just place a thread wrap or so in front. Try not to catch any hair up front. See, like I caught that one right there. That one's going to build into the head. We want to try to avoid that if possible. And so now we've got room for our head, we've got the wing out back, and now we've got this mess to deal with. So if you were going to tie a serpentipity, we can actually just take our scissors and cut it. A curved pair of scissors would come in real handy right here because we can just cut it. You just got to be careful of your thread and everything, unless you're going to finish the head right now. I don't usually do that. I usually cut everything and then finish the head so I can get the head the right size. But what we want to do is we want to take all these little extras and get them right back up top, because that's where they belong. They don't belong underneath. And you just take them and pull them up. And if they pop off, great. We want to get all that up from the bottom so you can actually start to see this fly coming together. And this is just a little generic caddis pattern. It's, you know, it's not anything specific. I'm sure somebody's named it something or other. And you can do this trick again if you need to get a little bit more room. Now when I'm tightening that, you can see as I'm starting to build that head, I'm wrapping to the back. The idea is we get this basically straight up. And this would be kind of a good lesson because we're going to do this with Comparadun wing. But it's kind of straight up, kind of like so. Now, with both hands available, we can actually separate this out a little bit. And we're going to take our thread and come back through. So loose over the top, tight underneath, loose over the top, tight underneath, and we're going to work our way through. Just like so. And don't be afraid to move your hands around. Your wing should not be going anywhere at this point. If your wing is shifting, I would say don't worry about it just yet. Let's get through this part of the process and see what happens. Because I've got another couple little tricks I can show you. And we're going to get to those in just a minute. So as we come through here, we're down to the last few fibers. This is the point where we want to kind of reverse everything and pull all these long fibers out and away. One thing, or out to the front. One thing I can mention is that there'll be some videos that you find, and I found them, where people cut that deer hair super tight to their fingers. And that's a great method. It's also a more advanced method. So these are more in line with beginner classes. So use this long stuff to your advantage so you can play with it and move it. As you get better, start to cut sections of it down, maybe a 1/4 inch at a time. So you get used to the fact that you're building with little tiny bits of hair coming out. Okay, we got a couple butt ends that got trapped in the back, and you can leave them, or if you want to be real particular, you can get rid of them. It's really up to you. So, a couple things here at this point. Okay. One, congratulations, you just built an elk hair caddis wing, and you just built the elk hair caddis head. Now I'm going to try to do this and come back to the fly. I don't normally do it this way. Normally I just trim it all down with my fingernail clippers. But if you get a pair of curved scissors, you can use regular scissors too. Shoot, I'll use regular scissors. Come in close, and you just trim this out little bits at a time if you're going to use straight shank scissors. Just take it, push it flat down, trim out. If you're going to use a pair of curved shanks, lift it all up. Let that curved shank ride with that hook eye so that it matches that wing. That wing and your wing should be matching the hook eye, basically. So for an elk hair caddis wing, you trim just above, so you have something that looks about like that, right? I'm not actually building the elk hair caddis, but it kind of gives you the idea of how to put the head in. Okay, so you just ride your scissors along with there. See, and that would be a decent little elk hair caddis, all the wings all over the place. We're going to fix that in just a second. But you can do that, right? And then you can come in and be like, oh, that's all messy. And we just start, take your time and start grooming it out. The more you do this, the better you'll get at it. You'll find which of these different traits and techniques falls in line with your style of tying better. And you'll gravitate towards those naturally because you're like, oh, this is easier for me. And that's good. Do that. That's what you want to do. Whatever's easier for you. That's why I'm just trying to show numerous techniques. So when we build the down wing, you can see the tips coming out back. And as I push them down, they should be just past that bend. Sometimes they'll come out about twice that length, but essentially we're building this fly over the body of the shank. Okay. So what I need to do next, so I'm going to go ahead and put another wrap. I'm going to pull down on this one as I hold this wing up just to kind of get it like that. That's a little bit fuller wing than I normally do. I'm going to go back to the best pair of tools in the business. I'm going to start at the hook eye. Hopefully I don't clip my thread out, but I like to get down really tight. And I also want to keep this slope trying to match the slope of the wing so that it's all flowing at the same slope like this. It's pretty close. I've got it pretty close. So you don't want to overdo this here and over trim it. But you do want to get the stuff off the sides and away from your hook eye. And we want to just build that ramp going right up the back. Kind of like so. Now if you have this little stuff left over, I'll tell you candidly, it's really not that big of a deal. You just leave it on your fly. If you're wanting to be kind of anal about it, a pair of pinch scissors work really well here. So you can kind of come in and sneak them in and pick out one fiber at a time and clean those up this way. Or you can leave them, and this also works really well for getting around the hook eye and stuff like that. If you don't have pinch scissors, I would recommend buying some. I know Andromeda's Fly Company has a pair. I'm sure other companies do too. I can't think of another brand off the top of my head, but Andromeda's has them. And so you can also do this if you don't have fingernail clippers. Although fingernail clippers are a pretty common tool. I think most of us probably use those. Now, you can actually tie this fly off by bringing your thread directly underneath. Uh-oh. Be careful. We don't want to put too many thread wraps in between. You'll see it separates. We don't want to do that. But I can bring it right in front from underneath and just put in a double half hitch, put it on where I can twist and push it back, and then finish the fly that way. I'm going to go ahead and back this off because we're going to dub this part. And I want to show you something else too. This next technique is actually a little bit easier to do when your hair is still sticking out and it's a little bit longer. The initial part. The downside of the second part of that technique is that it's going to force all of your hair up like this, and it makes it very difficult to separate and get your slope. It can be done, but just different strokes for different folks. So to make sure that we got this wing locked in place, so let's say that you're tying this and your wing's all down and around, right? Because this happens, and I'm sure there'll be one of you that watches this going, crap, my wing did that. Never fear, use this technique. Just take this wing, lift it up, pull it forward so it's sticking straight up. Take that thread around the back, directly underneath, so almost like we're doing a parachute post. Now, push that kind of back down on top, bring it right over that hook eye. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to get the best angle possible. Bring it right over that hook eye, and then back to where you started your thread. So it ends right in the back of the end of the thorax. Now you can see how much that just completely lifted that wing. You can also add glue to your thread as you're doing this if you're not confident that your wing's going to hold, or you want it to be more durable. You can add a little bit of glue to your thread before you do this. And now at this point, you want to get this wing situated where you want it. Do your final grooming, like, oh, I've got a little piece here I don't like. You can trim that out. I usually just leave those in because it helps make the buggy look and give it legs. But it's totally up to you. But you can take this, move it around, take your thumb, push it down. And the idea is that we have a fly that looks about like this at this point. And again, at this point, if you wanted to secure your wing by wrapping around and then using glue to do that, now you can tie off in front. The one thing I want to tell you is, and it's so tempting, don't tie off right here. In other words, don't whip finish right here. What happens is you'll create a divot, and it's going to push this wing down. It's going to look all funky. It's not going to give the natural look to the fly. Okay? So don't do that. Make sure you get your thread up right in front of that eye. So what I've got here is some Hairline Chocolate Dub Brown. It's Hare's Ear Plus. You can see the little silvery things in there. That's the plus part. And for this, you don't need much. I'll show you a really cool dubbing technique with natural hair. Now, a lot of you are going to want to run to that wax to do this. Don't do that. What you want to do, we can make this real simple. What you want to do is you want to build like a little taper so that you have like a fat part of dubbing that kind of goes down into a thin part of dubbing naturally. So it's kind of like a triangle like this. Okay, we're going to stretch that out just a little bit. This may be too much. You may need to add just a touch of wax. When I say a touch of wax, I just put some wax on my finger. I'm just going to wax that just like that, just so it sticks. So when I place the dubbing I'll stick it with my finger. When I place the dubbing to the thread, it'll hold. Now all I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom out so you can see this. All I'm doing is I'm going to take my thread, I'm going to take my bobbin, I'm just going to spin it. I'm not going to twist it by hand or nothing. To get the shape right on this fly, you really want to have this dubbing kind of loose. It's not going to do it. I didn't use quite enough wax. You want to be careful. You may have to use some, but you want to be careful how much you use, because you don't want it to knot up inside the wax. There we go. We're just going to spin that. I'm just spinning it in my hands, and you can start to see it's forming up. We want that dubbing just a little bit loose. There we go. You can see how it's knotting up. I'm going to zoom back in. And it's just dubbing itself into a rope. And so with natural dubbing, you can do this. It's a little bit more difficult with synthetics. So we're just going to lay this right over the top. That's a big ball right there. But you can kind of pull and separate it out. You bring it right over the top. If you want to pop your wing up even more, you can do the same thing again. You can pull your wing up, slam some dubbing in behind there. We'll just do it for fun just to show you. And we're going to bring this guy forward over the top. And that just helps give it the complete look. Now again, you can leave your head just like that. You can add more dubbing. This is going to be all really up to you. These are generic patterns. And we've already made it through the wing portion of this fly, which is what this entire session is about, is focusing on wings. Now at the front part of this, I'll go ahead and just dub a little bit on with my fingers. Again, I'm just trying to, some of you are probably like, man, this guy's going forever. Yeah, well, I'm just trying to show you techniques and different ways for you to conquer challenges. So like when stuff starts to go wrong, you can be like, oh, I've got this little technique that I know that I can do. So we've got something that looks like that. Now to finish this fly, I always recommend a wet whip. Glue that thread. Come in, pull your fingers, bring it back, get it out the way. If you got a little bit of deer hair sticking out, that's fine. No big deal. Pull it to the back. Pop that off. And we basically have it. It's actually a pretty good looking bug right there, even though I put in like all these extra techniques. But you can pick and choose the different techniques. You don't have to tie this just the way I just did it. I just showed you about 7 or 8 techniques that you can use and go through. And I really suggest you try using them with just an emphasis on how you do the deer hair wing. Okay, because you're going to see a lot of tyers do all kinds of fantastic flies doing a down wing. And there's different ways you can tackle the body and the head. So I try to cover some of that stuff to give you options that'll hopefully help you. So now I'm just going to take a stiff nylon brush. I'm just going to brush this to the back so that that natural dubbing is coming like right up over that wing like so. I'm going to hold that wing in place when I brush down because I don't want to damage the wing. I would rather have a trout do that or a fish. And you can see that it's pulling out, and now I've got my legs down below, and now you've got this super nice buggy fly. The eye is totally clear, and you're ready to take this guy fishing. So try up several of those techniques, and then also if you ever want to test to make sure your wing is holding in place, you just take it and pinch, and if your hair comes out, it's not tight enough. Usually that's because you're not wrapping your thread, which is what I meant to come back to mention. It's because you're not wrapping your thread through that big stack of hair, like it was showing. So there's some options for you, and here's a little caddis pattern, tied in black, brown like this. Use some dubbing for the body. This is a very generic pattern that's very material friendly. You can use a ton of stuff. You could use peacock for the little thorax underneath. You could put a little crystal flash underwing in. You can do all kinds of fantastic stuff with this bug. And this real simple pattern to get it to suit your waters. Tie it in olive, browns, blacks, grays, yellows, and so on. So other than that, I hope you've picked up a few tips and tricks that you can use to help make your process of tying a deer hair downwing a little bit easier. And on that note, make sure you come over and check out Fly Vault. Store your fly patterns digitally over there. It's a tool we built for everyone to use, including you. Just go over and sign up and make an account. And for you naughty boys and girls, you have a place to reach other fly tyers when you talk trash on Facebook. But you can store all of your patterns digitally on there, and it becomes a part of the vault, which is 100% researchable for anyone to use. So make sure you do that. And then you can also check out my other YouTube channel, Where the River Bends, if you like to hear little short stories on fly fishing. All right, gang, I'll see you week 2 when we do a tilt wing. Take care, happy tying, and I'll see you next time.